Welcome to PowerShell Wednesday, your weekly PowerShell meetup where we talk about PowerShell, we have some fun, and we do some things. And this week it's lightning demos. So we are going to do some lightning demos, like 5 to 10 minutes, hanging out, learning some stuff. If you ever want to present these in the futures, I got a new offer I can give you, which is if you are a first-time speaker and you're new to this, I will send you some swag if you join a future lightning demo. So really trying to encourage people to do their first talks, and the things you choose don't have to be super wild topics. They can be very simple things that are already built into PowerShell that you maybe just recently learned about, like what if, for example, would be a great one to cover. I digress. Stevie, you have some fantastic things to show us today. Click the playing right there. Good, sir. If you want to click share screen.
Sure. Let me get your face out of my way so I share the right screen.
My face is in my way too.
Bear with me for a second. Yes.
And just while you do that, I'm going to tell everybody, because I'm pretty excited about your topic. It's one of those huge wins in PowerShell where you do a little and you get a lot. The amount of code you can save by just doing what you're going to show today is incredible, really significant. So you're talking about parameter validation. I'm going to add you to the screen, add to stage rather. Let's click a clank. Boom, boom. There we go.
Perfect. Look at that. All right. Is that zoomed enough for everybody? I zoomed in a little bit, but I could go more if we need to. So
get a little
if
bit
you
more.
Notice it, just let me. Okay, I can do a
That's
little
perfect.
bit more. How's
Yeah,
that?
looks
Like
great.
good? All right, awesome. So yeah, parameter validation, super interesting, important topic in PowerShell. What's the point of it though? It's all about eliminating extra code that you have to write. It's about helping people avoid shooting themselves in the foot or stepping on Legos when they're running your code, whatever you want to say there. It's about bringing errors closer to the command that you're running on the command line. For example, you want your validation. So if I were to say see webinar demo.text and I want to say my item type for this parameter, and I wanted to say, well, this item type is a widget. The parameter validation that's built into new item is going to say, well, widget's not something that you can actually do. You need to provide me either a file, a directory, or a symbolic link. Those are the only values that you can have. Now, you could write that code and do that check in the body of your function, your script, or whatever you're writing, and do that sort of thing here with a big if statement that says, hey, if the whatever parameter, if this thing is this, throw an error, or if this thing is not in this collection, throw an error. You could do all that validation in the body of your code, but you should be doing it earlier. You should be doing it in the parameter definitions themselves. You should be validating your parameters right when you're defining those parameters. And there are several different ways that you can do parameter validation. It's either really, really easy stuff, or it can get super, super complex. So we'll step through. I've got two functions here that use a healthy mix of both, and we'll go through them and just give you some really quick high level things. So with this get fancy cert function that I've got written here, I have a couple of parameters. I have a location parameter and I have a store parameter. So when I run this function, what I can do is say get fancy cert my location. It's only, and this gives me tab completion with this validate set. So with this validate set, I'm telling the parameter that it can only accept user and local machine as valid inputs. And that gives me tab completion for local machine and user. Similarly, for the store, I want to be able to provide the store name that I want to get certificates from. The cool thing about this stuff being all built on .NET and stuff like that is if there's a particular .NET class that provides an enum, you can just decorate the parameter with that class type and you get tab completion and all of the possible valid values for free. And all you had to do is decorate the parameter with the right value. So for my store here, I can just start typing tab, and all of the available certificate stores that are in the local machine are or on the system are available to me. I can do whatever I want inside of here. So if I want to get my certificate from the local machine location out of the personal or my store, I can do that. And I've validated all that stuff in the parameter block really really close, literally right beside where I've defined that parameter.
Stevie,
And you can do other things as well. Yeah.
is it case sensitive?
No.
No. Like most things in PowerShell.
Yeah.
But it kind of helps you out when it tabs complete
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That stuff is not case sensitive. There are sections of PowerShell that are case sensitive. That's kind of beyond what we'll talk about here. But like parameter set names, those are case sensitive. Don't ask me how I found that out. But yeah, that's one area of PowerShell that does have case sensitivity. Another thing that you can do is validate the input, the value of the parameter as well, and we can look at this wait file function for that. So for example, this wait file function accepts a path. Like, I want you to look at this directory and wait for things to happen inside of that directory. Well, with the validate script parameter, you can run a script block to validate that input. So if, for example, my path parameter, I give it a path that doesn't actually exist, maybe I made a typo, it'll throw an error because test path, whatever the value is, that's what this dollar underbar means, doesn't exist. So it's going to throw an error right away and tell me what exactly I did wrong. And you can get really, really complex with your validate script stuff. That's a really simple one. It's just test path, whatever the value is. But for something like evaluating a hash table, you can do things like, hey, for every item in this hash table, or for every item in the array, because this accepts an array, if I'm evaluating, did you give me a hash table? And if you didn't, I'm going to throw an error. Does the hash table contain the specific keys that I need? If not, I'm going to throw an error. If the values associated with a particular key are not what I need them to be, I'm going to throw an error, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, you can do whatever you want to evaluate that thing. And the important thing is a validate script must return true for it to work. So if you've got something like this where this for each loop here doesn't actually provide output, just return true. That's all you have to do. Because any other, like if any of the cases fail, it's going to throw the error. So you just return true, and all the other cases are your falses. And that's parameter validation in a nutshell. I'll give you some links, Andrew, for the show notes for afterwards, but I've actually written a couple of blog posts on the matter. Let's go. Let me find it now that I've got so many
Yeah, I can post it in the
windows
chat.
open. Yeah, so I've got a link about argument completers that you can add to your parameters as well. That's some validation that you can do, so you can complete the values that people can actually provide. And then I've actually written about adding this parameter validation stuff on the Microsoft Dev blog as well, or the PowerShell community blog thing or whatever this thing is. So I'll give you links to both of those if people need a refresher afterwards. But yeah,
Awesome.
that's parameter validation.
I will have links to those in the description. I just want to say, so pretty much, so we got validate script that handles everything except for the ones that are pre-built, which I guess you could use validate script for anything, but using validate script, you can do anything. You can run PowerShell and do all kinds of stuff. So there's like a very high ceiling on that, but there's a lot of easy ones like validate set that are super easy to use, give you tab completion, validate your input. It's great for security, you know, secure coding practices. Hey, you can say you're doing them, you know,
Yeah,
that's pretty sweet.
exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Stevie. Let us bring up our good friend, returning guest, Morton.
Hello,
Welcome.
hello. Thank
You
you.
know, my little nickname for you, my brain comes up with nicknames. You might not have heard of this, but whenever I hear your name, my brain just does this little rhyme. It's Morton Here's a Who. There's this like old Dr. Seuss thing called Horton Hears a Who, and I was actually in the play as a kid. I was the mayor, not a very big role, but yeah. Anyways, I had to share that with you because I shared some embarrassing moments before the podcast or before this webinar. So, Morton, what are you going to show us today, my friend?
We're going to talk about a small introduction. Nice to know when getting started with APIs. And it doesn't have to be any specific API. In this example, I'll go over some different APIs in general. So if you'll post the link for the GitHub page, then people can follow along if they want to and test out the code. And most of the APIs I use is also publicly available, so anyone can use it. Right, just to get started, when working with APIs, you typically have some different parts of request. In normal PowerShell language, you probably have a get or a set or a delete or a rename or something else. In most cases, if not all, when working with APIs, you have different methods, which is a get, a post, a put, a patch, and a delete. And I mean, get should be pretty explanatory. It retrieves data. Post is to create new data. Normally, there are some instances where it actually doesn't create, but that's something we'll cover in this topic. Then we have a put request, which could be updating or replacing an entire object or resource on the given endpoint. Then we have a patch, which is normally a partial update to an existing resource. So let's say if we have a user called Andrew Platek and wanted to just rename him, we would use a patch to rename Andrew Platek to Andrew Plau. And if we wanted to remove data or delete, it's just a delete. Hope that made sense. Just going straight into it and trying to mess around with an API. This JSON placeholder, typecode.com guide, is a free, open to use API. It has some sample data. You can mess around with it all you want. Nothing gets saved as such. It's all overwritten right after you have placed data or anything like it. Does that mean you should post sensitive data? It does not. You should still not post any sensitive data to an unknown API. But just to get started, for this, we're using invoke REST method. The invoke REST method will reach out to the URL and try to get a response. And once it gets a response, the response from a given API is typically in JSON format or in XML. And the invoke REST method will automatically convert it to a PowerShell object like you're used to. Then we are passing along a parameter called URI, or rather URL, which is the endpoint you want to hit. And then you have your method, in this case, just a get, and running that, and running the right host. We receive 10 users, and if we go into the response, then we have all 10 users that is available on this endpoint, and the given data that is also available. And it's just a PowerShell object like any other PowerShell object. So if you wanted to just return the user number 5, which is in this case is ID number 6, because PowerShell always starts from 0. I mean, hope that makes sense. If not, let me know.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yeah, of course.
Because I have not seen from Fred, so we may be able to go a little bit long. I want to say, if you're learning this for the first time, one thing that kind of stuck out to me, it's like URI. I always thought URL, and if you see it all capitalized, it'll look maybe like an L to you. They're basically the same kind of thing, but a lot of times with APIs, they refer to URI, Universal Resource Indicator, something like that. Basically a URL.
Yep. That is correct.
Oh.
And just to provide an error example as well, I know there's only 10 users. So if we, in most cases, they would have a following URL or URI, just to manipulate with a specific user by choosing the specific ID of the user that you wanted to get. And if we were to run this code block with the try catch, we should receive an error, and it would go down to the catch request, which it did, making the get request. In this case, with this API, we don't actually get any error object returned to us, so it's just empty. So it's not like we get anything useful back that matter, but most APIs that you work in enterprise environments will return something to you just to make you let you know that, hey, there's something wrong in your request. It's malformed or not correct for that matter. Right? Any questions so far? I'll ask multiple times, but
how do you show what keys you're pressing?
Yeah. Get
There you go. Screencast mode.
disable it. Now it's no longer showing anything. I'm typing and toggling it back on. Hope that makes sense.
Awesome.
Moving on to a post request, and as I said at the beginning, a post request is almost in any cases designed to make a new object. In this case, we are trying to make a new user. And from the get request here, we also, if I can copy correctly, we could also see what kind of properties we had available. So we could set the name, the username, the email, address, phone, website, company. In this case, I'm setting 4 properties. I could set less, I could set more. I'm not sure there's any validation on this particular API, but some APIs might have the email being required for you to create a user, for example. And then finally, you'll have to convert it to a JSON, because when working with APIs, you will almost always send a JSON to the endpoint. And just to show the PowerShell object, would look like this. It's just a simple hash table with a key value pair. So we have a key called website with a value called John Doe, and converting that to JSON would look something like this instead. So just removes the hassle for you to make an object like this in PowerShell. Something I used to do when I got started was, this is really painful, but doing something like this, because I didn't necessarily had a good work with method with hash tables. So, but it works, and as long as it works, why change?
So that is the JSON format, the way that it's kind of in brackets with commas and all that other stuff. Got it.
This is how it's sent to the API when we send this with the body. Moving on to the request itself, we're using a REST method again. We're hitting the exact same API. In this case, we're just hitting the user's API. If we were to hit a specific user, it would most likely be to update that specific user. But just to create a new one, we hit the base endpoint. We use the method post, and we also specify a body. A body is what is being sent along to the endpoint. So in this case, we are sending over this data to the endpoint. And in most cases, you don't have to specify content type. It will default to application JSON. I like to do it. I have done it always, so that's how I do it, but it shouldn't really matter. Sometimes it can matter, just to point that out as well. It depends on the API, depends on if default is set or not. Running that request, let's just run this as well. we successfully created a user with the ID 11, and the response we got back from the URL when using this post request was the website that we set, the phone number, the email, the name, and we didn't send an ID over. This was created automatically by the endpoint. Yeah, just to try and show something that would fail. I haven't tested this part, so I actually don't know. Yeah, okay. It doesn't have any validation on the parameters that you send along. So
it's a bit of
could
a
say
it's a bit of a simple API example, right? It's meant for
yeah.
testing. So other ones will have different validation.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh boy.
Oh
Boy.
boy. We should see something similar here.
I tried GitHub Copiloting to Andrew Platypus just to let you know. That's in video too.
Wonderful. But yeah, that's the basics for this post request. And just to show the same with a put request, let's just query the user number 1 and just printing that out. Not sure why my Control-C doesn't work always, but we can see that the user with ID 1 is named Leanne Graham, username Brett, something. And just to update that user, we could similarly like creating the user, specify a new hash table. We actually don't need this ID because it's specified in the URL. And for this one, we are hitting the same endpoint, but this time with the ID of the specific user that we actually want to update with a put request. And again, specifying the update body, update user body, and running this should return something like this. So our object went from being ID Leanne yada yada to being John Smith something. Any questions so far?
I have a couple questions, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
Or a couple of observations, I guess. And this kind of thing right here that we're doing, this is kind of simple. It works. I think a really great thing to do, and people will have to do as they go through APIs, is you're going to have to read some actual docs and kind of translate it into your mind a little bit, which can take a little bit of time the first time. But listen to what Morten said earlier about the different routes that you can use, the different methods of like put, patch. Those are all things that you're going to see in the API documentation, and you just translate it into these examples with invoke REST method, where you define the content type, and every single one's going to be defined and how it works. So definitely make sure you're aware of that. And what was the other thing I wanted to mention? Oh, I don't know if you're going to cover this, but I love how APIs, we're dealing with objects. And let's say you write a command to wrap an API call. Well, all of a sudden, if you write your code properly, you can pipe API call functions together and do a lot of really powerful stuff and interact with things in a very hands-on way that you're used to with PowerShell. So this is absolutely worth learning. Ooh, I'm just kind of geeking out. Sorry, Morten. You can keep going.
Yeah, of course. I'll not cover that particular example, but I'll cover something else that is also useful and hopefully something that is used generally on more APIs. And again, every API is different, but once you learn working with APIs, it will all seem so similar to each other. There might be difference in authentication. There might be a difference in how you construct your payload to the given website, but all in all, it's pretty much the same. It's just different URLs and different properties. Like I think a good example myself is get AD user. You know it, and you know what properties are there. And working with it is pretty simple. But if you have to use something like get Azure AD user or Entra AD user, I'm not sure what it's called anymore. I'm using the API. You'll get a different set of properties, which you'll have to handle differently it's the exact same thing with one API from the next API. Some is similar, but all in all, they are a bit different. Moving on to the lead user, pretty straightforward. You're pointing at the specific user ID and just a method calling delete. That will be the go-to path in most circumstances. Now for this particular REST API, test API, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't actually return any response, which is quite annoying to work with if you actually have to check that the given user is deleted. Something you can do is, I know for a fact that it will error out if I try and delete or not. I tested it yesterday, but for some reason it is not failing today. Either I'm just imagining or I made a mistake. Either way, normally if you try and hit an endpoint that doesn't exist, like a user with the ID 111, then you would receive an error. If you just receive an empty response, that's totally fine. Some do that. It's pretty annoying for the user of the API, but you can handle it. Looking at something like this, and just as an example, get member, then you have a set of properties. Normally you would also have some kind of length or count or something like it. In this case, count is 1, and it's because there's an empty white space. Pretty annoying. Something I personally like to do if I know the API is I can just count the amount of members that is returned on the response, and from that result I can then see if the given user is deleted or not. In this particular case, it didn't work because the response returns the same no matter if it's an error or not. So that's pretty annoying, but yeah. That's it for deletion. And as we talked about, updating or doing a partial update, like renaming Andrew Pla Tech to Andrew Pla, just specifying the specific property you want to edit, supplying the new value, convert it to JSON, hit the URL with the ID of the user, the method being patch, and setting the body. It's the same thing as posting and as putting. And doing that should also give us a new email at example. Yeah. Hope that makes sense so far.
So far, so good.
Great. Moving on, we'll look into some different APIs. I found an API from a energy company in Denmark that actually has an API. I have no clue how it works, and there's no docs on it, but hitting the API will return something like this, where we have a limit, which is 100, which just means that we get back 100 records or 100 of the given data set that we are requesting. The total amount in the backend, which we haven't gotten to yet, is 4,312. The data set that we requested is called gas flow, and the records shows something like this. And just to display the first 3 in a nice manner, would look something like this. That's pretty easy, if I say so myself. But then again, all of these examples has been without any kind of authentication, and in most cases, authentication is the hard part. I haven't set anything up to actually show that this authentication part works. Just trust me. I'm an engineer or something. But just to take the basics, you usually will see 1 of 3 kinds of authentication to a given API. You'll have your basic authentication, which will look something like this, where you have a username, you have a password, then you convert it to a base 64 string, and your base 64 string will look, I mean, I don't know why my Control C doesn't work always, but will be converted into something like this. And I mean, it's not like I can read a username or password from this, but yeah. And then the query to send along with the invoke REST method could look something like this, where we have our URL that we want to hit. In this case, I just put in something. We are requesting it with a method of get, and in our headers for this REST request, we are typing in an authorization header, which is a basic authentication header, and then the base 64 authentication information. That's pretty much it. Then you're authenticated, and every time you need to hit this API, you're passing along this header, which has the authentication part in it. So each time you're hitting this endpoint, you're passing along the authentication.
It's pretty common. And authenticating is the hardest part of APIs. So
Yeah.
absolutely copy and paste what someone else has done. And if you're still stuck, just ask for help, because they only can work so many ways. And people who have experience with them know exactly how they expect to authenticate for the different ways.
Yeah.
As Morten is showing you here.
The second option, which is also common, I know Microsoft is using it for example, logic apps. So if you want to hit a logic app, a public logic app, you have an API key, or in their instance, it's called a SIG key. It's basically just a secret. Could be 1, 2, 3, 4, or something else for that matter. And for that, you're basically doing the exact same thing. Have your endpoint or your URL, the method you want to use, and then a header with the API key. And this API key, well, it's in a hash table, so it's just called a key, can be named multiple things. In this instance, I just wrote X API key. Could also be API, could also be API key, could also be secret, can be many things. It's up to the given docs of the API to actually proclaim what is the given value you need to insert here, and then passing along your API key, and your given request would look something like this. Yeah. There's also another example in the same exact way. This time we are passing the API key again, but this time we're doing it directly in the URL using a query parameter. The way a query parameter works is at the end of the given endpoint you want to hit, you put in a question mark. A question mark lets the backend API know that, hey, I have a filter, or I have some extra data that I want to pass along to this endpoint. In this case, we're saying that, hey, this is a query parameter. The parameter value is API underscore key, or rather the key we're sending to it, or the variable is API key, and the value of that API key is our API key. It's the exact same method, just differently formatted.
Can we sit here for just a second and let this sit
Yeah.
in? So we're looking at the URI. We said that's basically like where you want to go to. And there's a couple of parts of that. There's the base URL, which here, if you want to highlight api.example.com, all right, that's going to be consistent in all your requests. That's where we're going to. Maybe sometimes they'll have like a /v2 depending on the API, but that's going to be your base. Then you have the endpoint, which in this instance is endpoint. It could be something like earlier, it was like users or devices or groups, something like that. That's like where you're going to go to. And then we have a query string, which is super common as a way to filter. You'll see it in your URL all the time as you click on things, the little question mark, a bunch of values, just like this, like the pairing, just like this, followed by ampersand. And then you can tag along as many as you want. Yeah, exactly. If you were to have more, but that's called a query string, and it is so common, and it looks really confusing. There's a lot of weird characters there, but it's actually not as confusing as it looks on the surface. Okay. Just had to add
Yeah.
that because it confused me a lot in the beginning. There's all
Yeah,
these
of
different
course.
words they're using. They also called like the endpoints, like the routes, I think is also what they call it at times. So
I mean, when working in, for example, Python or something, and you want to build a web page, you have different routes, which is just like going on a straightaway. You have a route to turn off to the right. You can turn off to the right at the next exit and the next exit, and so on. And based on which exit you take, you can go a multitude of other ways from that exit. That's at least a good way I see it. Not sure if it makes sense for everybody.
perfect.
Right, moving on. We also have a big baddie called OAuth 2.0, something that is highly adapted a lot of places, specifically with Microsoft Azure as well. That's why I use it. Normally, you would get some kind of token by making a request to an endpoint to log in, so to speak. I haven't included that particular example. If you want a particular example, you can go to this blog post. I actually don't know if I streamed the application itself, so I'll just put the link to Andrew. Then you can have a look yourself,
And if
or
you're
we can
watching
chat
this
afterwards.
yeah, if you're watching this after the fact and you're not here live, check the description below. Oh my gosh, so many links. Click them all. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah. And then after you have gotten your bearer token or your token from that endpoint, then every time you hit the given URL you want to hit, same URL as before, with a method called get, your headers has the authorization, and in this case it's a bearer token, is what's it called, with a space, and then the given token that was returned to you from the given endpoint. That's all I'm going to cover on authentication. So let's try and move on to some paging. Let me know if I'm short on time or if
I
Fred
think
shows up. On
yeah, Fred is here, so we may need to hop on, but I think we should cover
yeah,
this again in the future. APIs are tricky, and maybe people are hearing about it. They haven't found that use case. In the next couple of weeks, they might find that use case of like a module for some kind of service or product that they use already. Well, that is your excuse to learn. Maybe there's already a module written for you. That would be sweet. Use that. Or a lot of people like learning the hard way and by actually going through, because you have to do that once with an API. I feel you have to spend the time to understand how it works, see what kind of errors you get. That's a good call out too. If you're going to be working with an API, a lot of times there's common errors that are returned for HTTP type stuff, but also they might do custom ones. So in the documentation, you can kind of know what you're looking at whenever you get certain errors. And yeah, troubleshooting APIs can be,
documentation.
yeah, documentation's so huge, but
Yeah,
it can feel like,
it's your best friend when working with APIs. Sorry for interrupting.
yes, no, you're good. It's just a little confusing at first. So just spend some time with it. Let it kind of sink in. It is not as confusing as it seems. There are a little bit of newer terms, but they borrow the same ideas that we're all very familiar with. And once you can interact with APIs, the world is your oyster. It is a world-changing event in your PowerShell career when you decide that you want to dive into APIs, especially REST APIs, because they're just everywhere. And you can take what you do in PowerShell and apply it to so many more things. All that time you spent learning, how to pipe things together and write a script. Well, now there's like way more use cases that you can actually flex those muscles. Keep coming to PowerShell Wednesday. Keep scaling up. See you on discord.gg/PDQ. Morten, thank you so much. Whoa, we got Fred in the building.
Hello, sorry on that, Andrew.
Oh, am I hallucinating? I like the colors that are kind of coming through here.
It's the camera is not just that perfect.
No, I think it's retro and it's amazing.
Well, it's probably not retro for good reasons, but well, we'll have to take it as it is.
We'll take it.
So, thank you for having me over.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Well, you know I am. I've got this bragging thing about my toys going on, and it just might help. I've got a new toy to brag about. So, well, not so much new toy, but an old toy getting a very fancy new one. You know what I'm talking about? There's this thing called PS Framework, and I just might have started actually, finally adding a feature that was at some point intending to, maybe do after all or not. Well, it's been a bit of, I wasn't sure that I really wanted to do that. It turns out I actually really wanted to do this. I just told me I wasn't willing to do that. You know, Andrew, about this thing called for each object parallel.
I've heard of such a thing. Yes, PowerShell 7.
Yeah, it's pretty great, but you also point straight at the heart of the problem there. PowerShell 7. Now, I just finished, delivering a 3-day workshop to German public sector customer who is very much not deploying PowerShell 7 yet. So there's still people stuck in 5.1. And then I realized at some point, some proper run space tooling might be nice. I've got a totally over-engineered run space workflow thing, which is really great for doing complex parallelized scenarios. I've got an entire conference talk at PowerShell Summit over that one. It's an amazing tool, but it's too big a tool for most use cases. It's an extremely great tool when you have that use case, but for regular, I just want something like for each object parallel kind of thing. It's too big. I've got some other weird edge case run space scenarios, but I never really touched on the main line. Like I've got these few things to do, go do it in parallel. I never did something like that in PS Framework itself. So I finally decided, okay, Fred, it's time to stop checking out on that. Just because other people might think PS Framework should be doing everything doesn't mean PS Framework should not be doing everything. So I added still one more feature in here. And I'm having fun with it. And let's get started on a quick demo. You can see my screen?
Yes, and it looks beautiful.
Excellent. Well, it's an empty VS Code console. I haven't managed to screw anything up yet, but I'm working on it.
Infinite possibility, right?
I've got plenty of great, numbers. Numbers are great. Numbers are awesome. So let's do something for them in parallel. So this new thing is called invoke PSF run space. You can, of course, tell it how many things it's supposed to be doing in parallel. So let's do 2 because I don't really want to overload everything. Then I'm going to do a script block, which is the thing we're doing in parallel. Now, since we're also going to go with some variable using, we need to see how this whole thing ties together. So I'm going to go with a PS custom object, which has a name equals the using column name. We need to make sure that works, right? I mean, if that doesn't work, who would be switching from for each object parallel? So we've got a number, which is the current number. We need twice that, which is the current numbers times 2. And then, since we really don't want to rush PowerShell all the time, let's do some little start sleeps. So one run space isn't hogging all of the fun. Milliseconds, let's wait for 100 milliseconds. That shouldn't be too damn bad. Well, let's see. PowerShell, in case you're wondering, this was your go do it moment. So, worked just fine so far. This is pretty much for each object parallel as far as it currently goes. So I wanted to make this better. I wanted to make this really, really great. So let's add one more thing here. Write variables, processing number $_. And action. Of course, since we didn't do dash variables, that's not going to happen. So let's also include that. And there we're seeing magic happening. So far, that's pretty simple. Hey, let's do for each object parallel only. Also add support for variables messages in the background run space, which default for each object parallel does not offer. So That's nice. I like doing nice things. But I need to do more magic. I mean, it can't be a toy of mine if I didn't reinvent the wheels with more shinies, right? I mean, there's something missing here, obviously, if we don't do that. So let's do something fairly simple. Again, what we're parallelizing here doesn't really matter too much from what the hell is actually happening perspective. So again, I'm doing the start sleep because if I don't give background run space as much to do, the first background run space just blows through all of the workloads and we are not seeing much there. So simple numbers, nothing weird happening yet. But we have something, a new parameter. And this one is a bit funny because I can also do output style result. Now, let's not quibble too much about my naming sense here. I know it's iffy, but what we're getting here is a result object, which includes, well, weird things. We have an input object, we have an output result, we have errors, we might have more. So I'll try more. If the current number is 2, then this whole thing blows up because, as we all know, 2 is very much evil. Now, if, however, we have an uneven number, we of course need to inform people about this dire state of things. Is uneven. And in order for this to make a bit more sense, I'm going to grab that and store the results in a variable so I can analyze that for a little bit. You saw no red stuff happening on screen, nothing wicked happening yet. So we have results. And as we can see, the second entry didn't quite work out the way we might have hoped. We did not still get a result object for that. We got what we sent. We did not get any output because there was a terminating error happening here. And we get access to the error that happened. And of course, I kind of need to unwrap that. So demo gods, great thing showing me that I messed up somewhere. This is a PS framework error that happened. And the actual error would probably in the errors count. That would be only one. And it's probably somewhere inside of that. So I need to unwrap that. We'll fix that in the next version, which is probably going to happen tonight, so I can actually do that. Whatever. We get the we should be getting the original error, and I did not sufficiently test that. Here we go. That is the actual error that happens, and that should be the top level error, and it's going to be the top level error as soon as I finish beating myself up over this testing mistake. So we did that. We have the number 2, which is evil. So let's take a look at the other one. We have the third result, which is number 3. Now, funny thing, this is again me hiding important critical stuff from you. You know, PowerShell is trying to hide things from you. And there are a lot more information that can be included in here. Now, this is not Fred being happy. So, Fred, good job messing that up. Warnings should be included and error records unwrapped. Great. Anyway, the final intended result, and for some reason it no longer works because I know I tested the warning before I shipped that. The intended final result is that you get on the result object of all of the message streams. And you know what? I remember now what the problem was, because if we now go into warnings, then we should actually Okay, no, this is completely broken. Some of the streams don't show properly in the display, but they are inside, like the verbose streams. So I need to fix that. Anyway, all of the message streams that you generate in PowerShell should be included in the result object, so you can see everything that happened within that runtime.
And this is specific to the output style result.
Yes. This is specific to the output style result. If you just go with output, instead, all of the streams like warnings, verbose, and everything are being redirected to the output stream of invoke PSF runspace. We can demonstrate that one, definitely, because if I now actually stop not stealing everything, here we go. If you do that, we get all of the warnings in the mainstream. So the warnings from the background run space were shown to the main run space. So far, that is, okay, it works. It is, in my opinion, a superior option to for each object parallel already. But no, we're not done yet. So let's grab that and add another, because we can now also provide variables. Let's go with multiplier equals 5. And I'm not multiplying by 2, I'm multiplying by multiplier. So I can now pre-provision variables for the background run spaces. Did I mess that up somewhere? I set it to 5. Should be 5. Oh God, what did I unleash upon the world? Is this completely buggy, broken? And okay, this is going to need more debugging. Sorry, this should not have seen the world as it is.
Did we define multiplier?
Yes, here in the variables.
Ah, I see it, yes.
That should have been 5, so the input should have been multiplied by 5 in this instance.
Right.
Okay. Consider this fixed as soon as I manage to wrap that up, because that command is seeing an update tonight, because I definitely thought I had all of that working. But well, demo gods are really great for debugging.
I mean, it is a new feature. It's not like,
it is,
hey, this has been around for 5 years. This is hot off the
yeah.
presses.
On the other hand, Andrew, the kind of quality standards applied to my tooling. So I'm really unhappy with myself right now.
I forgive you, and I think others do as well, because this isn't just an MVP, in my opinion, right? Look at all the additional enterprise-ready features that you've already considered, such as output style. Those are things that if someone was going to write this themselves, they would not consider until they'd already written it and they need to readdress it. So it is really nice to have someone with a very enterprise best practice perspective sharing stuff like this with us.
Thank you. So for the more nerdy amongst us that have dealt with run spaces, this entire thing supports that you provide a finished initial session state rather than me adding variables and functions or whatever for you. So you can fully provide your own session state for that. Quick warning, if you do no language mode, this whole thing is not going to work. But there's one more thing I kind of want to brag about, and that is the as task option. Because you see, Andrew, it wasn't enough for me to just, I want to do for each object parallel and better. That wasn't enough for me. I'm an ambitious guy. I also wanted to replace start thread job. So here we are. 1 second per item, 2 items in parallel. This is going to take 500 seconds for everything, right? So now I've got a task object. Task objects are nice. Going to tell us what's currently going on, how much is being processed, how much is running, what's their limit. It could also provide a name if I wanted to do that. So we now know how long it takes until it's done, right? So I'm going to collect the current result. Collect current result. which is all of the results that we're already done processing. So we can pick up whatever is still missing. Let's pick up the next section. So we don't have to wait for it to complete to start receiving results. We can just pick them up whenever we want. So function receive result. It is parent block. It takes the task. And now here's something interesting, in my opinion, and that is if you have collect current results. Let's do that without parentheses. If you call a method without parentheses, PowerShell is going to tell you just how you can call it, how many options there are. So that's okay. What's with collect result? That one also works. That one, and okay, that's the one, yes. Collect current. That one should be the one. There's two options here, and one of them is I can provide a commandlet. So let's do that. Task dot collect current PSCM delete. Let's implement this. And nope. Task results. So you can just take this task object and use the same, consume the same stream redirection for your own wrapping commands, because now the warnings are coming from receive result. So on the one hand, we have a task object that can handle everything. We can, well, just do it inline, like for each object parallel. So I think I've managed to do a fair job of enabling both scenarios. And of course, if you want to kill everything, that too is an option. Die. And that's it, minus the bugs. That's what I had in mind for it. Just a way to have a convenient inline parallelization. Just throw the script block at it, because of course, if we are not being too picky about this, let's remove the throttle limit to a slightly larger number, and this just runs through in parallel as intended without any weird thing. We don't even need this because positional should be working just fine. There we go.
So that's it. If somebody wants to get started, that's the quickest way right there.
Yep, that's the shortest version. Essentially, the same way you would be calling for each object parallel. Only now you have a few more options on top of that. And it works in PowerShell 5.1. So if you're willing to bite the bullet and take a dependency on PS Framework, you no longer have to do like a, do I have PowerShell 7? Do I have enough PowerShell? No, you just have it. It's just there.
I mean, at least on your personal machine, take a dependency for your workflows. PS Util, PS Framework, a lot of these tools can save you a ton of time, especially if you aren't in the stage where you've written, you know, a bunch of tools that you're very comfortable with. You should absolutely adopt these. Got to give a shout out to the logging in PS Framework as well. Pretty extensive configuration system as well, and more. So Fred, great work, my friend. I've played around with like run spaces and stuff like that in the past, and I've gotten things to work, but it is a different thing to learn. This, you don't really have to learn much from what I'm seeing. Like you've kind of already done the work. It's pretty simple.
Done what I could about that. Yes.
I guess, so let's imagine a use case here. So let's say simple thing. We have a bunch of users, maybe get a user, maybe some other users in some other different way. We have a users variable with maybe 10 users in it. Would we do users and then hit the pipe and then invoke PSF run space? And then kind of like how you did here, refer to the object with $_, and maybe there's properties in it that we need to do whatever command that we want to do. And then we can just kind of like go. That's all we really need to do, right?
Yeah, for example, let's take just your example literally. The users invoke PSF run space for each underscore get AD group member. Oh, no. So get AD principal group membership, because that's get AD group member is if you have the group and want the members. Get AD principal group membership if you have the user and you want the groups it is a member of. And output style result means we now have on the one hand the property of the user, on the other hand the property of the groups the user is a member of. That's it. This one line gives you a result with all of the groups for all of the users.
Simple syntax. Thank you. Just, I wanted to, some people had some use cases and couldn't make the translation of how to do it. That's what you do right there. Very simple example. Very flexible as well.
Yeah, that output style thing, that changes a lot of the complexity that you can get away with on the inside here.
Okay. Good call out. So make sure if you want to use this method, you're using the output style or result. All right. So people liked it. They want to get started. Install PS resource, install module PS framework, right?
No. Install PS resource, install PS framework, install PS resource, PS framework.NuGet. Then you do install PSF module on it.
Copy paste it. Give me something they can see. Make it easy on them. And I'll post it in chat as well.
Install PS resource, PS framework.NuGet.
And that's your
and
package
after that,
provider. It's a little bit better than PS resource.
And after that, you can do install PS framework or install PSF module, whatever. There's also a one-liner that gets you the bootstrapped to PS framework.NuGet if you don't have installed PS resource or if there's some other thing blocking you. As long as you get into the internet, it makes your computer ready to install PSF module things. And fun thing, that one also comes with, a computer name parameter if you need to install this on a target computer then rather than just your local machine. Which the last one, that's definitely not something you'll see install PS resource doing anytime soon.
Fred, you have so many good tools. I think we need a Fred month, to be honest. I'm serious. If you're ever interested, I think there's literally so much where we could plan it where it's like, okay, today, just logging. And then maybe I'll use the logging in a script. And the next time we'll look at the ways that we can improve the right PSF messaging or, I don't know, tie things together in some kind of way, because there are so many really impactful parts that I think it can show people the value a little bit more if we break it up into pieces, because there are a lot of ones. Funny
enough, Andrew, I'm actually currently working on that. I also need to do the same thing for internal presentations at Microsoft. I do internal presentations as well. And I am planning to do an entire kind of piece framework project with all of the tools, one after the other, and the different use cases and different setups. And I can definitely promise you, considering that the call for papers opened just today, that I am going to submit more than just one piece framework session to PSConf EU for the coming year.
Sweet. Awesome, man. Well, looking forward to that. I like that reference right there. All right. Well, everybody.
All right.
Yeah. Fred, I got to add Morton to the stage. What up? What up? Thank you, everybody. Stevie, shout out to you as well. And I got to just add a couple funny comments. People have been going wild all day. I'm loving it. Fred, I got to say, man, pretty impressive how you ran into an issue, right? You knew exactly what to show or like where to go with the properties, which was like mini properties deep. And this is my prediction. Correct me if I'm wrong. In your mind, as soon as you saw that, you generally know where to go to fix that line of code. You know what you'll do to fix it. Is that true?
Absolutely. That's pretty much very exactly where my mind went. It's like, okay, I know I just finished that thing. I have all of the code and the pathways and the considerations. They're still fresh in my mind. I mean, I shipped this a few days ago. So I'm like, hey, yeah, okay, I'm going to just jump back right in there. I still have the VS Code pretty much open, and then just to reopen the project. And I'm there. This is going to be fixed before the day is done here.
That's the benefit. If you're out there and you're using modules, congratulations. You get to test things and you can open up issues and actually help someone who did, let's be honest here, maybe the hard work. So it's a really cool opportunity to get out there, check out the new functionality in PS Framework. Boom. Morton, pleasure as always. We're going to have to cover APIs in the future. Hey, Mexico, we did the API thing for you. So you got to put it to some use. Let us know where the bumps are. And I think Morton is okay in a couple weeks or 3 weeks doing this again and making a little bit more tailored, maybe even bringing you or Shelby on to have a little chat with us. But hey, who knows what the future holds? Stay tuned every single Wednesday for PowerShell Wednesdays, 2 p.m. Eastern. And that is on Wednesdays for PowerShell Wednesday. New podcast every single Monday. New awesome episode with Haley going out on Monday. I have a few others in the backlog. Really excited about those. Thank you, everybody. See you on the PDQ Discord, discord.gg/PDQ. Fred, Morton. Until next time, my friends.